What's going on, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the Life on 11 podcast. Today we talk about Christian elitism, what it means to start separating people in the church based on spiritual superiority. So let's hang on for the ride. Without further ado, let's take it to 11. What's going on, Jeremy? How is your week?
Man, it seemed to have gone pretty fast. It's been good.
Holiday weeks, dude. Holiday weeks.
Yeah, that's true.
They'll do that to you every time.
We've had some beautiful weather, though.
We have had amazing weather.
I've enjoyed being outside. Riley and I were outside for like 2 hours last night, and I was just enjoying listening to the birds. And
Were you getting work done or just chilling?
Get work done with Riley around?
I mean, it was worth a shot.
That ain't happening.
It was worth a shot.
We were racing. He was riding his little like 3-wheeled like bike thing.
Okay.
And I was riding the little 2-wheel scooter. Yeah.
Nice.
Of course, he always wins because Dad's so slow. You know.
You sound a little salty.
I am a little salty because even if I win, he still says he wins.
Okay.
And I just got to go with it because, if Riley says he wins, then he wins because he makes the rules.
I understand.
What about you? How about your week?
Oh, same. It's, recovering from Easter. And yeah, like you, I feel like it's Tuesday, but it's Thursday.
Yep.
And, apparently there's another church service this Sunday to plan for.
What?
That's what they told me. I don't know.
I heard the next church service wasn't until Christmas.
That for some people. See you in a few months. Happy vacation. But no, so that's going down, and yeah, it's, always in that recovery mode. And yeah, so, today's Thursday. It is April the 24th. You know what that is?
No.
It's the NFL draft tonight.
Oh,
The
yeah,
NFL
that's
draft
right. It
going
is.
down as we speak. While we are recording, I would like to say that I was correct in my prediction that Cam Ward was going to go number 1 overall.
Did he go number 1?
He went number 1 overall, which is great. Went from like unranked prospect.
Good for him.
Yeah. Travis Hunter went number 2.
I haven't paid attention at all today.
Yeah, I think most of the people from Colorado are completely overrated. So, but,
we'll find out when they're playing with the big boys.
Yeah, go get you some Jacksonville Jaguars. One of the players I was hoping was going to slide down the draft board to the Washington Red Commanders is already off the board at pick number 7. Pick number 6 to the Raiders is, Genty. He's gone. I know he's gone. I know. I was hoping he was going to slide, but
man, he would have had to slide a long way because we had a great year last year.
We did.
So we're not picking in the top 10.
I was telling you, the boys were like, I hope we do good in the draft. We have already done good in the draft, boys. We are not drafting in the top 10. First time in your life. Way to go, big boy. Like, you don't even know what it's like. You know? You're going to have to wait to the end of the draft show. We knew who we picked in the first 15 minutes of the draft. Oh, man. Anyway. Well, it's good, man. It's good. And, so tonight we are talking about something that I think both of us have experienced in our lives from one side of this or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight we're talking about Christian elitism. When I say Christian elitism to you, what do you think?
So the first thing that comes to mind for me, and I know I've talked some about my past, growing up in a conservative Mennonite church, talked about there was a lot of rules, there were a lot of things you had to do, a lot of things you could not do.
Yep.
That weren't based in Scripture in any way.
Mm-hmm.
They were just some man somewhere along the lines determined through their interpretation of the Scripture that we're not going to allow you to do this or this or this or this or this.
Uh-huh.
Put them in writing, and that's just how it was. So to me, that was my first experience with what I would call Christian elitism.
Okay.
Because it's somebody who thought that they were holier than everybody else and made these rules for people to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the first thing I would say I experienced as far as Christian elitism. That's evolved in my mind a lot since then, but that would be the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah. I would agree. That's probably what I would think, and from my perspective, I thought about people I knew that I had experienced in my life.
Ooh, okay, yeah. I mean, I can definitely think of specific people. But
yeah. And we Googled this right before we took the pot, and Google tells us that Christian elitism refers to a belief within some Christian circles that certain individuals or groups are superior or more spiritually advanced than others, often based on factors like knowledge, experience, or social status. This can manifest itself in different ways, including looking down on others, using exclusive language, and dismissing the experiences of those within different backgrounds or perspectives. And I think that's a really good encompassing definition.
Yeah, I would say that's all encompassing. I can think of a lot of different ways that manifests itself.
Right. And we have to name, I think, two things right off the top. Number one, elitism exists everywhere. So
Absolutely, it does.
This is not a church problem. This is not a Christian problem.
No.
It's a people problem.
Yep.
Right? There are sometimes being elite is a good thing.
Yep.
Right? We're playing in a basketball tournament this weekend. By we, I mean the AAU team that I coach with our boys. And a lot of those teams now have started to add words like elite in front of their names.
You know, I got to tell you, I thought you were talking about our dudes playing old man basketball, and like some of us were elite, and I'm like,
no,
I don't know who you're thinking about might be elite, but
elite
ain't any of us.
Competition. If we're like elite wing eating league, I'm in.
All right, yeah,
right?
Okay,
but no. So like we no longer have just like, you know, the ballers. We have the elite ballers,
okay.
And so sometimes that can be a good connotation in some things.
Yeah,
but there are financially elite people. There are social status elite people. Almost every time you start putting people together, you start grouping more people in any circle, you are going to have at some point some problem with elitism, right? So that's
just because that's how people have been since the beginning,
right? And I would even say like there's a version of like, you know, Darwin's survival of the fittest that plays right into the elitism. Like if you're not elite, you better step up your game because you're going to fail.
Now I feel like you're starting to talk about the government.
My bad.
Yeah, we're not touching that on this one.
That's right. Life on 11 after hours. That's the premium content. That's right.
All right. Hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. But then the other thing we need to name is that elitism in religion, Christianity, following Jesus, however you want to put it, that's not a new problem either. No. Because if you read through the New Testament, there was already Pharisees and Sadducees, and Jesus, tell those people that they need to stop doing that. And, you know, so it's not only is it not a problem that's only in Christianity, it's not even a new problem for Christianity. It's kind of always been there.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look at all the stories of the people who were shunned by everybody else, but then Jesus, you know, healed them or talked to them or, you know, all of those things.
This woman down the street and stone her, right?
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
You know, tell those little kids to get out of here.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
There's all that.
Yep.
We talked about one of the scriptures in the New Testament that kind of speaks of this is 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Paul's talking about, you know, that there was a form of elitism in the church in Corinth because people were arguing about who they followed. Some were following Apollos, some were following Paul, some were following, you know, Jesus, you know, some were saying they followed Peter, right? And so there were all these arguments about who was the best, who was the closest to the truth because of who they followed. That is, in fact, a form of Christian elitism, right? Well,
you could say the same about all the different denominations in the church and how it has split so many times over elitist ideals.
Right. Well, and even I don't think we get it so much in our area because I don't know why, maybe just the culture here, but there can be elitism even what church you go to, right?
Well, yeah,
like,
true.
I mean, I know a few people, they go to particular churches because that's where people of their particular social status go.
You know, I was going to say, I think more so than anything else nowadays, this day and age, social status drives elitism more than anything else, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, that's just, you know, that's again, right, wrong, or indifferent. I do think that's a thing. Like, well, I am this kind of person, so I'm going to go to this kind of church, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. So how do you think how can we as Christians, first of all, recognize spiritual elitism in ourselves or in the people closest to us?
Yeah. That's a good question, because, I mean, one thing that while we were talking back and forth before we started here, I think there's two ways it can manifest itself: intentionally and unintentionally. So intentionally, someone thinks that they are spiritually more mature or better than someone else. And, that's probably easier to spot than the unintentional. You could get confused where you think somebody is being an elitist when they're actually not meaning to be. Like, they're just trying to do the best for what they think is right.
Right.
And it comes across the wrong way. I mean, you see that happen everywhere. So obviously in ourselves, if we're looking to avoid that, like your parents say, put yourself in their shoes, like look at what you're saying from someone else's shoes. Think before you speak, things like that. Just play these things through your head first, because I mean, I don't think our goal is to seem better or more spiritual than anybody else. We just want to share Jesus's love. And
I think that's true most of the time.
Okay, all right, fair.
I mean, I can tell you as a minister that I have definitely run into people who intentionally look at others and they're like,
well, yeah, I mean, you're right. I'm not going to disagree with that.
Yeah.
I have as well.
Right.
Yeah.
They have no right to do, say, whatever. They haven't been, and the scriptures do talk about in times, like deacons and elders and overseers, like they shouldn't be a new convert, and it does give some parameters for those sorts of things. But when you are trying to hold tight, and it just becomes like, a little kid holding onto a ball and don't want to let it go.
Yeah,
that's when elitism becomes a problem, right? When you are holding people to really what I would even say are ungodly standards, not trying to, and you're not even trying to grow them. To me, that's one of the things with elitism.
Yeah.
Is there's a difference in seeing and knowing that somebody might need to grow in something and then offering the hand to grow.
Yeah, in some senses, they might be trying to prevent them from growing,
exactly,
so they can maintain that
power,
elite status.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
you're right. That's definitely hurtful and damaging. And yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah. And I mean, I've experienced that in my own life, right? Where there's times in my life before I was a minister, when I was just a, little guy on the block,
a punk kid.
Yeah. And people were like, this punk kid has no business. And instead of it being like, how can we help train him? He has a heart for Jesus. How do we help? It was just like, keep that guy away.
Yeah.
For as long as possible, because he doesn't, so that's that elitism attitude. And then your accidental elitism, I definitely think a part of that, I think, is, man, we can do it. Like, I have seen more accidental elitism when we get in groups.
Okay.
And the conversation starts to start, and then all of a sudden it's like, I think you get two or three people together, and it can very easily become an us versus them mentality.
But like you said, the accidental kind, I mean, if like, say it's somebody really well, and you get into that small group conversation, and maybe they have a really intimate connection with whatever topic you have. They've experienced it, they've lived it, they're very passionate about it. It could seem like they're a Christian elitist, but actually they're just very passionate and they've lived it and experienced it.
Yeah.
So if you have relationships with people and something like that happens, you can understand that a little better.
Right.
I met some random people years ago that struck me right off the bat as elitists. The more I talked to them, the more I realized it was very unintentional. It was almost more like they were confused. And I remember that vividly. It's way too long a story to tell right now, but yeah, I think we'll run across that. If we don't know the people that we're talking to, it's easy to judge them the wrong way.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, the second that we allow, we start recognizing it, and I guess maybe like one of the ways that I see it for Jess and I is we homeschool our kids, right? So we have 4 kids who are in school. One of them goes to a private Christian school. The other 3 are homeschooled. So we have made a decision as a family to make that, and then our youngest school age is going to come home next year, and we're going to homeschool all 4.
Okay.
That is a choice that we have made as a family for a multitude of reasons. Some of them are actually not even religious in nature. They're just our kids' learning styles and some other things, that they've gone through. A big part of it is religious, but not all of it is. But I know that when we go to certain homeschool functions, or if we are around the homeschool community, there can be an elitist attitude there. Like, we homeschool our kids, so we care more about our children's faith than people who send their kids to public school. And sometimes that's accidental. Sometimes I think that's intentional. But it's almost like you can walk in and like feel this spirit of, we're the people who take our children's discipleship seriously because we homeschool.
Yeah.
I really like, those are some of those situations where I'm like, ooh, wow, like this feels like a very elitist thing. And Jess and I try not to be that way. I don't think we're that way, because for us, this is a decision that we've made as a family, and we try not to look down on anybody because we understand that our situation is very different.
Yeah.
Based on other factors, that when Olivia was born, we just needed to stay home because we had a baby with medical needs.
Yep.
So Jess couldn't work, and we had talked about homeschooling. So it was just this perfect moment to make that transition. Right. But that's one of those moments where I can see elitism coming in. Honestly, I see it a lot in pastors groups. Like, there's this old saying, like, you might as well just walk up to somebody and say, hey, my name's Pastor John, 235. And you look up and you're like, what? And you're like, well, you're going to ask me how many people go to my church, so that's how many it is. It can become this elitist.
Wow, yeah.
Based on the size of your church.
Wow.
I will tell you point blank that, I was a minister for close to 10 years before I finished seminary.
Okay.
I took a alternative ordination route, and then Jesus called me to go to seminary. I flat out can tell you people that looked at me differently after I had my seminary degree. I had a woman who came up to me. I was serving the district, and had a woman come up to me and say, I'm so glad that you're going to Bethany Seminary because now God will be able to use you in the denomination.
What?
Verbatim.
Wow.
That's a form of elitism.
Yeah.
It's so good that you have those magic letters after your name. Most people probably meet me and they're like, that dude doesn't have a degree. Like, are you kidding me? But there's elitism in that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would, obviously I haven't been to seminary. I'm not a pastor, so that's an experience but in the corporate world, you have a very similar thing with a college degree. Like, it could be somebody, they'd be the smartest person you ever met, but they don't have that college degree.
Yeah.
They're looked at differently by everybody who does.
Yeah.
Even though they might be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I can understand that from a corporate world perspective, how that can happen. Because I mean, you hear corporate, you instantly think elitism. I mean, that's just how it's been portrayed in the world. So
how do we prevent it in our own lives?
One thing I think is just be real. Be a real person. Don't go around acting like you got your crap together.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there are issues that I struggle with all the time. I mean, I
actually have a list. Would you like to read it?
Well, I have a list, but I don't know if everybody wants to hear it because we'll be here for another hour.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, like, just be real. Be a human being. I mean, all the guys I deal with on a day-to-day basis, I mean, I'm just as real to them as we are sitting here right now. And to me, that's what we need to be. Be true to yourself and be that person to everybody you see. Don't change who you are based on who you're around.
Yeah.
Just that, then you don't have to worry about trying to keep up a persona. If you're the same person everywhere you go, you don't have to worry about messing up. You know what I mean?
Exhausting is what that is.
Yeah, for sure. That would be exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scriptures talk so much about humility.
Yeah.
They talk so much about humility.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think when we get real about ourselves, you talk about first being yourself, even being real about who you really are.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and
even the things that are not the best.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be honest about those.
Right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
It means that's, and
just means you're normal and you're talking about it.
Right. Yeah. I think so much like humility. Man, that is all over the scriptures. Humble yourself under the hand of God. We live in a culture where we are constantly tempted to talk about how great we are.
Yeah, it's true.
That's
look at the old Facebook.
Yeah.
Everybody's putting all the good stuff on Facebook.
Right. And we have, filters to make our faces look better. Yep. And we have Chat GPT to help fix our grammar. And we have you can create an entire thing because you're supposed to create this image of yourself. Look how amazing I am. And our culture is like this dog eat dog mentality of whatever you do, you need to go out and prove you're the best.
Yeah.
It is our entire society is a meritocracy.
Yeah.
Everything you do should be based on the merits of you get rewards based on how well you perform. That is completely contradictory to the gospel.
Yeah.
And Christians, we should be pushing back on that
as
hard as we can because there is none of that in the gospel, right? Yeah. And the first will be last. And so I think part of combating elitism is embracing our own frailties and faults and not hanging on to those, but understanding our own brokenness.
Well, giving them to Jesus. Give those to him. Let him work with that.
Yeah. And then surrounding yourself with people who are going to be honest with you. Right. And they're going to want to see you grow in things. And then I think as a minister, when I think about the church, I think a couple ways that we resist elitism in the church. Number one, and I love this. This was in some of the things that we were reading to prep for this podcast, but it talked about, power structures that anytime we create, because churches have to have infrastructure. We're going through this in our congregation right now. We're rewriting our constitution and bylaws, and we need to have certain rules, laws, governance that tells us how we're going to function as a people.
Yeah.
But all of those structures should be based to draw people closer to Jesus and help move people along, not keep people out. And the second that we start building structures and building policy that is solely based on keeping one group at arm's distance, which we can do. I mean, I can tell you we can do.
Yeah. There's plenty of places that do.
Yeah. And if we start building church power structures with no means of drawing people in, that they aren't intentional to say, and if you are here, how do we get you to here? If those power structures don't have that, then all of a sudden it becomes elitist because there's not only is there clear separation between the haves and have-nots, there's not even a way for the have-nots to become the haves.
That's
and that could be a government podcast, by the way.
That could be a government podcast. I was also going to say that quote needs to go on the quote wall. That was a good one.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
But I think that's the other piece because we've got to think about discipleship.
Yeah.
And I think too, like, our world sees that.
Yeah.
Our world sees that. And ultimately, I think that's why a lot of people have church hurt.
Oh, yeah. I think 100% you hit the nail on the head on that one. There, obviously we can only speak of the generation that we've lived in, but I know for a fact there are plenty of people my age, around my age, that experienced someone or a group of people who were elite for whatever.
Or thought they were elite.
Or thought they were elite. Exactly. Okay. And used it to push this person away. Maybe it was intentional. Maybe it was unintentional. But you're right. There are a lot of people with that hurt that just abandon church altogether.
Yeah.
And that is something that really hurts. I mean, because I know these people personally, and that it's hard to say anything to that person because they're like, listen, these were the people who were the Christians, and they did this to me.
Right.
And that's hard to come back from.
Right. Which to me points to another one of those things on that elitism can cause us to do that we need to break and that is have a lack of respect for somebody else's experience.
Ooh, yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, scripture is 100% true. We should always be pushing towards the Bible.
Yeah.
But there are times where we need to take a step back and remember that there is a person that is going through something that we need to honor where they're at in their journey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there are times where we have to remember that person is living a reality. And in some moments, God might be saying something to them that isn't necessarily what God is saying to us. And that doesn't mean that they are wrong and we are right, or that we are wrong and they are right. It means that God speaks to each of us individually.
Yes.
And sometimes when somebody says, God said this to me, we need to drop the elitist attitude that says, I hear from God more than you do.
Oh, yeah, that's a slippery slope.
Or because God said this to me, he has to say the same thing to you. That to me is part of this huge church.
Yeah, that's a major. Yeah.
I hear from God more than that person. And instead being able to go, okay, well, if that's what God's saying to you, then I'm praying. I'm going to try to support. Or if it's anti-scripture, like if somebody comes up to you and they're like,
that's
God told me to leave my wife. Okay, that's not okay.
Yeah, that did not happen.
Right. But if they're saying like, I really feel like in this season, God's asking me to do this, who are we to go, well, God didn't tell them that. Like, I can hear from God, and God's never said that to me.
Yeah.
Well, that maybe God didn't need to say that to you. Or maybe God did say it to you, you just forgot about it.
Or you weren't listening.
Right. And so we have got to honor people's experience and understand, I know I've said before, like, divorce is 100% sin. And we should always tell people that they should try to reconcile their marriages and that divorce is sin. But we don't necessarily have to say that when the first time, in the middle of the wife who just found out that their husband blew their life savings and she's trying to, yes, divorce is 100% sin. But right now we need to meet her where she's at, pray with her and say, hey, let's continue this conversation.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, well, what happens if you get divorced?
Yeah.
That's that elitism attitude that doesn't allow somebody else to live their experience and name it and journey with them.
Yeah. Maybe this doesn't fit here, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it up anyway.
If it doesn't fit here, I'll edit it out. No
okay. All right. Yeah. We'll just, so if this stops abruptly, no, but seriously. Oh man, now I lost my train of thought.
That's what I did.
Maybe it doesn't belong here after all because I forgot it.
There it goes.
Okay. It probably won't come back.
And I do think too, like, I think overall, Jeremy, like, I think for you and I, it's a hard thing to think about because I think we're both real people. I think what you see is what you get.
I mean, you look pretty real.
I'm pretty real.